Hey guys, first off, thank you to everybody who watched my last video. I did not expect that big of a reaction. I'm glad everybody enjoyed that. But I especially want to thank those who commented on it, because after reading your comments on those, on all you young furs out there who are starting to make your first fursuit, you actually inspired the topic of this video. So this video is going to be about, despite the title, this video is going to be about making your first fursuit, not buying your first fursuit. That is a topic for another video, and I can make that if you're interested. But today I'm going to be talking about a few things that concern making your first fursuit. In this video, I'm going to cover two things. I'm going to go over my top 5 things to avoid when making your first fursuit, things that I see in a lot of first-time makers and will help you improve on when you make your first fursuit. And based on the comments, I'm also going to talk about wearing your first fursuit to a convention and my thoughts on that. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to get out of the way before anything else, your first fursuit is going to be bad. And I'm not making this comment based on your age. You could be a 50-year-old person making their first fursuit, and it's not going to be good. And here's why. You are learning. Anything you try for the first time is going to be bad because you're learning at it, especially at something as artistic as making a fursuit. I am still learning making fursuits, and I've been doing this for 5+ years on a professional level, and I'm still learning new things with every fursuit. So do not feel discouraged if your first fursuit does not come out the way you want it, if it comes out not looking like all the beautiful fursuits you see online. It's not because you're a bad maker, it's not because you did something wrong, it's because it's your first time. And even if your first time does come out really well, trust me, if you still keep making fursuits in the years to come, you're gonna look back on your first fursuit, something that you probably at the time thought, hey, this is pretty good, and you're gonna be like, what the heck was I thinking? You're gonna look over it and you're gonna laugh at what you did, and it'll be fun because you'll see how much you improved. So with that, I'm going to start going over my top 5 things I recommend against when making your first fursuit. As I said in my last video, there's no wrong way to make a fursuit. You're definitely free to do any of these things. This is just some things that, based on my personal experience, I find avoiding these things will help give you a better overall product. Number 5, I have 4 fingers, sorry. Number 5, this is based purely on personal experience, and if you're smarter than me, which I hope you are, you avoided doing this on your first fursuit, and that is carve out the inside of your fursuit mouth. See? Look at this. Look at my mouth. It's open. I can breathe out of it. Well, on this, actually, I didn't even do this on my first fursuit. I probably did this on like my 4th or 5th. Yeah. What I did is, instead of carving open the mouth of my fursuit, I gave myself like a weird kind of slant of the muzzle, leaving about this much airway for me to breathe out of my fursuit. And then, being the smart person I was, I wore that suit to Anthrocon, and I got in line for the fursuit photo. So if you've been in the fursuit photo, you know it's just all fursuiters standing around each other waiting to take a picture. Well, that happened, and then I was in the middle of the group, so I was waiting for the parade to begin, which happens right after the photo. And here's the thing, I had about ½ an inch of airspace, and I couldn't breathe. I was having a breakdown in the middle, standing in the middle of a bunch of sweaty bodies because I couldn't get any air coming into my suit. It was not a fun time, so please, I hope you did not make this mistake, but always remember to make sure you can breathe out of your costume. Number 4, try to refrain from using spray paint. Dry brushing on a fursuit is a very respected technique. It's not super hard to do, and there's a ton of tutorials out there on it. But if you want to paint your suit, please look up those tutorials and don't use spray paint. Sure, it's easy, but it's messy. It gets everywhere. It's not precise. If you want to see what I'm talking about, here, let me grab my first fursuit. So here he is, Shukaku. If you know Naruto, you know this is Gaara's demon. He was the first fursuit I ever made, like literally ever, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Don't quote me on that. But I don't know how well you can see it. He has spray painted markings. Yeah, and with these markings, it bleeds. Sometimes the spray paint dries really hard and it gives you cracky fur. It's not a fun time. So I highly suggest looking up actual dry brushing tutorials if you're into that, or sewing your markings in. It doesn't matter, but spray paint, not good. Number 3, and I hope I'm still going in the right order because I can't remember. I feel this technique is popular because it's easy, and just remember that the easy way is not always the best way. Number 3, try not to use Foamies. If you've ever been to a craft store, you know what Foamies are. That's actually the brand name. They're really thin foam kind of sheets. I have one. They look like this. See how flimsy that is? I highly suggest against using Foamies, especially for the eyes. When I say that they're an easy option, it's because people who have characters with colored sclera, which is the white part of your eye, they don't know where else to go to get that color, so they opt for Foamies. But see, here's the thing with Foamies, they're not very sturdy. As you can see that I've done this like 5 times now. Look at that, that's not, I can punch that. Foamies are not very sturdy, and so what's going to happen is if you don't reinforce this in the back, your eye is going to start to cave in after a bunch of wear and tear, and that's no fun for anybody because suddenly you have an indented eye. Foamies are definitely usable. I have a fursuit that has foamy eyes, but if you plan to use Foamies, either double them up, buy a thicker grade of them, which does come in a few colors, like black. You can get in a few inches thick, and that's actually pretty reliable. Or put something hard behind the Foamies to make sure you can't punch the eye out. But instead of using Foamies, a preferred alternative in my opinion is using hard plastic. There's actually a really good site out there. I'll probably link it in the description. It's called Tap Plastics, and it sells a pretty good variety of colored hard plastic, which is the most popular option for the eyes. So I suggest looking into that to make your colored eyes if that's what your character calls for. Number 2, this is another one that I feel people always opt for because it's an easy option. I feel they also opt for it because it's sometimes the cheaper option. But number 2 is refrain from using craft store fur. If you live in America, you know what Joann Fabrics is. I'm not sure of other craft stores in other countries, but what craft stores generally do is they sell a variety of furs that they label as craft fur, and that's exactly what craft fur is. I highly suggest against using craft fur for the number 1 reason is it's not a very good material, I guess you could say. It's meant for like dolls and little like stuffed animals and such. It's not something meant for a high quality luxury animal costume. And another reason not to use it is because, especially if you're using it on a bodysuit, the backing of it is very scratchy. So you're not going to have a fun time wearing it. You're going to be doing this all con. It's not fun. Sometimes you can get away with using craft fur for accents on fursuits, especially on the parts of the face that the human face is not going to touch. So like my face is not going to touch the foam of this muzzle, so I could probably get away with that. But especially, I suggest against using it on the bodysuits. It's just, it won't be a fun time for you, and if you're making the costume for somebody, it's not going to be a fun time for them when they call you up and say, hey, I tried to wear my fursuit, but I was scratching myself the whole con. The alternative to using craft fur is obviously ordering fur online. It's a little more pricey, but it's definitely worth it, and it actually comes in a variety of colors. Craft fur does not come in too many colors. There are so many sites out there. If you want, I can link a few of the popular ones in the description. It's definitely worth it. Save up the money, put in the order, and you're definitely going to feel a lot better about your final product when you have some nice, beautiful fur you waited for on your fursuit. Okay, number 1. I saved this one for last because it's the biggest one. Let me preface this by saying, even though this is something that I suggest against, this is not something that's going to come overnight. It's not going to be an overnight thing you should fix. Number 1 is refrain from gluing your seams. And now what I say by it's not going to come overnight is that as a first-time maker, gluing seams is actually probably the better option. Why is it the better option? Because it leaves a lot of room to learn. Sewing seams is not something that really comes supernaturally. I understand it's hard. It's hard to gauge where you should sew. It's hard to gauge how to like glue your fur back onto your fursuit head once you've glued the seams. Don't freak out and say, oh my god, I gotta go start sewing my seams right now or my fursuit's gonna look terrible. That's not true. Gluing seams is a very good thing for first time makers, which sounds kind of contradictory, but it's true. What this is actually about is as you continue to build suits, you have to start stepping away from it. Do not continue making suits and gluing your seams, because glue is good for keeping the fur down, but it's not good for keeping the fur together. So what happens is it'll start to peel off. It'll start to just, your seams will start coming undone. Your fur will start coming off. It's a mess for everyone involved, and it's not a good time. But once again, I understand that it's not the easiest thing to do. It's something you gotta work for. It is definitely worth it to learn how to do it in the long run if you want to keep making these suits, and especially if you want to start making them for other people and make them professionally. But yeah, number one thing is as you grow, move away from the glued seams, start to sew. So that's my top 5 things I see in first time fursuits, top 5 things. And I will tell you right now that everything I just listed on that list, I have done. Don't feel bad if you're a first time maker and you're listening to these tips and you're like, oh my god, I gotta change all of that now. No, you don't. If you do not feel comfortable in doing any of the alternatives I suggested to the things I said that you should refrain from, then don't do it. You have time to grow. These are just some things that if you feel ready, they're gonna help make your suits look a little better. Okay, moving on to my thoughts on wearing your first fursuit to a convention. My flat opinion on doing that, do it. Worst case scenario, nobody notices you. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing, but no one's gonna call you out and say, trust me, they won't. Best case scenario, somebody's gonna come up to you and say, hey, who made your suit? And you can be like, I made my suit. And you can definitely start up a conversation with them. Maybe they're also a new fur maker who is trying to get into it, and you could teach them something or two. Maybe they're a more well-known maker who has not heard of you, and you just got your chance to let them know who you are. Overall, it's a really good experience for you. Trust me, one of the funnest things to do at a convention, especially for more seasoned makers and more seasoned furries alike, is seeing brand new suits walking around, because you're walking around and you see the names you kind of always know, but you're like, hey, who made that over there? And you talk to your friends about it, and sometimes you go up to them and you say it and you learn their name. It's a really good way to get yourself out there. And especially as an artist, just not even as a fursuit maker, as an artist, you want to get your work out there. And what better way to get your work out there than walking around a con and strutting your stuff? There's no better way to expose yourself and your work than just getting up there and do it. So to all of those people, all those young furs out there or first time makers who are nervous about wearing your first fursuit to a convention, I say go for it. I think you're gonna feel so great, and once you get up there and you just start showing it off, you're gonna be so happy you did. And a lot of the times, especially even with me who's been doing this forever, every time I go to a con and I see new suits, I get inspired. I come home and I make more suits. I see things at cons and I'm like, that inspired me to make this, and I apply it to my own work. So it's a really good melting pot of ways to get inspired, to meet new people, to feel good about yourself. It's definitely a great experience. So to all you out there who are hesitant about wearing your first fursuit to a con, go, do it, strut your stuff. You have my support, and if I see you at a con, I'll come up to you and be like, who made your fursuit? And you can show me it, and I'll take a picture. I'll be like, good job. Okay everyone, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it, I guess. Thank you to everybody who keeps commenting and telling me. I love reading your comments, just from the ones from my one video. I love all the people telling me how they're starting their new fursuits. It's just so awesome to see how many people, like I said before, I love it. I'm sorry. But if you have any ideas that you want for my next video, I'm gonna try and do this weekly as of right now. I'm gonna try and post them like every weekend. So if you have any specific topics you'd like me to cover, I'll try and see if I can go over that. If not, I'll be back next week with another video about some kind of crazy furry opinion. So yeah, alright, that's it. Bye!